Hello, welcome to DigiMed TV. This is the second in our series of broadcasts. We've got another 8 weeks of broadcasts on the subject of digital medicine for a variety of healthcare topics. Today, we're going to be talking about digital healthcare for preventative healthcare, digital medicine for preventative healthcare. We've got some great guests lined up for us, but to just take a moment to reflect on what preventative healthcare means. We're in a current situation where we're very aware of coronavirus, and it's probably the first time for many, many years that we've really taken a great interest in how we can protect our health. Most of our activity and most of our investment in public health services have been around treating us when we've fallen ill. But now with the pandemic, we recognize that it's very important to stop ourselves getting ill in the first place, or if we do become ill, we want to be able to prevent the situation from getting any worse and becoming hospitalized. So that is the theme of today's presentations. So I'm going to go straight into a presentation and tell you a little bit about my thoughts on preventative healthcare and my involvement in preventative healthcare. To begin with, though, I'm going to just show you what we've got lined up for you today. I'm sharing this presentation. Today, we are very happy to be able to invite our guests this morning. I've got a video recording of Associate Professor Lily Abdullah. She's been going to be talking about the work that they've done at University Putra, Malaysia, on the development of applications to help with mental health, which I think is a very important issue as a fallout from coronavirus. We've also got Leon Eisen, who's the CEO and founder of Oxytone. He's going to be talking about their medical grade wearable technologies, which help to look after patients at home instead of having to go into hospital. So they get hospital grade care, but from their home environment. And then we have Lucia Panese, who's a CEO and founder of Milan-based Imaginary. And she's going to be talking about Imaginary's work in healthy, active aging. This afternoon, we also have some great guests lined up, including Leon again. He's going to be reprising his work on wearable technologies for looking after people at home. But then we have John Warner, who's a CEO and board member of a variety of companies, but he's going to be talking about the work of Orca, who are the body in the UK who are responsible for looking at and validating mobile applications to do with healthcare. We also have Pete Stevenson, who's a president and chief operating officer of a company called eCare21, based in the USA. And he's going to be talking about healthcare ecosystems. And then we have Ron O'Donnell, who I've known for a good number of years. He's based at Arizona State University. And like myself, he has a keen interest in how you can use technology to better manage your personal health. And finally, we have Noah Folstein, who's a legend within the games industry. He was responsible for games at Google. Now he has his own company offering consultancy services and development services, a company called The Inspiration. And he's going to be talking about gamification. So that's the lineup that we have. But I just want to talk about the background to preventative healthcare. It's some years ago now that Sir Simon Stevens, who's head of the NHS in England, was really warning us about some of the consequences of lifestyle-related conditions. And as he put it, obesity is like a slow-motion car crash that could cripple the NHS. So these are the kind of things that we are doing ourselves to contribute to this lifestyle related conditions. We have a sedentary lifestyle. All of us, no matter how we look after our own health, are attracted by convenience foods. We are on occasions, particularly in the days of coronavirus, we comfort eat. We don't get as much exercise as we would like. and so on, that all of these things have a negative effect on our health. So one of the consequences of the lifestyle that we have today, including the use of technology, is that it reduces the demands on our physical and mental health. And as a consequence, it can lead to the situation that you see on the screen there, with an overweight young boy watching television and feeding himself with crisps. And although his health might not be a problem today, it's creating problems for the future. So we also, on top of this, we have the problem of the aging society. And the picture that you see there is of my mother when she was in Kettering General Hospital. She was suffering from dementia, and she's a good example of how healthcare costs can rise as you get older and result in families looking after their elderly relatives and a rising cost. So how do we address these problems? Well, we have a number of different ways of doing that. When it comes to lifestyle related conditions, we can develop clinical solutions, and these are important things like vaccines and medications that help to either prevent or manage these conditions. We could also, when it comes to overeating, we could influence the food industry through public policy interventions and education, or we could develop better personal health management solutions and practices in our own lives. So if you look at the clinical solutions, we've already seen the benefits of vaccination, but it's quite an attractive idea to think that we can protect ourselves through a jab or a medication, or even things like gastric bands when it comes to obesity. And it's attractive because it places the onus on somebody else to look after our health. When you look at public policy interventions, we already see this with things like smoking and the effect of health on smoking, and alcohol abuse as well. And so these can be mitigated through things like taxes and legislation that discourage us from engaging in these activities which are harmful for our health. We could also have public health interventions through awareness and education. And you already see this on the back of cigarette packets. You see education programs at schools, and you see a variety of different things like nutrition labels on the food that you buy to help you make aware of what is good for you, what is not so good for you. And again, we could look at better personal health management systems. And there's a variety of tools that we will be covering not only today, but also later during this series of programs. So which of these is going to provide the better solution? Who's going to provide it? Will it be the medical professionals finding cures for us, life sciences industry, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, all the other companies involved in this? Will it be them who provide the solution? Will it be the government who introduce measures to help to prevent us from becoming ill by influencing our lifestyle behaviors? Or will it be ourselves who look after us better? So it seems to me that it is very important to make this transition from looking at health as being something which we need cures for, to ways in which we can prevent ill health in the first place, or better manage it when we are ill. Now, how do we make these changes? And who's going to influence the behavior? Is it going to be doctors? Is it going to be technology companies who provide the technology? Is it going to be politicians? Or is it going to be the food industry? Or is it going to be the media? Or is it going to be ourselves? Well, there's a couple of ways in which I started down this road. It's 7 years ago now that I decided that it was a good idea to better manage my health. And at the time, I had finished my role as the founding director of the Serious Games Institute. And I also was looking at a range of different technologies. Technology has been a theme throughout my life and my career. So I decided to try and combine gamification and enabling technologies to influence my own personal health. And so I used over the last 7 years a variety of different mobile applications and devices. I started with a product called the Jawbone Up. I also used a product called BuddyBand 2. I've used the Withings Health, and today I have my Fitbit. So it's still 7 years on, and I'm still using these technologies and the mobile applications as a way of monitoring and motivating myself. And you can see the results. Well, I hope you can see the results. From left to right, you see a picture of me on stage in a play, and this was when I was probably in my late 40s. And you can see I have a double chin. I'm pretty grossly overweight, and going forward in time, you can see me presenting at a conference in Kuala Lumpur with a little bit of stomach padding, and then on the right you can see what I looked like in May 2013, again in a stage production, and what I looked like some 4 or 5 months later, after I'd engaged on this journey. Well, what caused me to start this journey was a number of different things happened at the same time, including some friends of mine, close friends of mine, telling me I was getting fat. One of my friends asked me in the stage performance you see on May 2013 if I was where I got my stomach padding from when I wasn't wearing any. And I had an analysis of my DNA that showed that I'd got double the chance of getting diabetes 2 from my genetics. So this is what caused me to embark on the journey. So this combination of gamification and technology took me to where I am today. And you can see with shots with the same person, stood next to a gentleman from University Putra Malaysia that I collaborated with in 2013, stood side by side. And again, on another event in February 2015, you can see I'd managed to keep off the weight. So how was it done? Well, you can't gamify if you don't have any information to work from. And so some of the technology involve measurement of our medical situation. I've already mentioned that I use the Fitbit device today, which tracks my physical activity, number of steps, and as devices have got more sophisticated, they also measure things like my heart rate, and in combination with the mobile applications, they also show me how well I'm sleeping and give me an opportunity to record what I eat, and give me some advice on that. But of course, we also have other devices like the weigh scales that you see there. This is a kind of weigh scale that you would see probably in a gymnasium that measures also your body mass index. And these devices are becoming consumerized. I have a Wi-Fi weighing scale in my bathroom that I use to keep track of my weight, but also measure things like my body fat and my body mass index. So this is a kind my view of the lifestyle technology roadmap. Increasingly, we are getting consumer devices like iWatch, like Fitbit, and a number of other devices which provide us with advanced health metrics. And as time goes by, these are becoming increasingly close to being medical grade devices. We also can help to ensure that things like our healthcare costs are linked to our lifestyle behaviors. In other words, if we don't look after ourselves well, is it right that we should pay the same as people who look after themselves well? You've got to take into account genetics, etc. But that's just an argument that I don't want to make, but it's something to think about. We can create healthcare ecosystems and already this afternoon, we're going to be talking to the CEO, President, COO, and President of eCare21, who've already got this healthcare ecosystem. And we can use wearable devices for a range of other applications other than healthcare, identity applications, safety, and security. So this is the way in which I see the roadmap developing. And before I go on now to talk about the guests that we've got on this program, just to let you know that coming up, we have some great broadcasts, great topics. The next one, next Tuesday, is going to be on education and training. All of these broadcasts will take place both in the morning for Europe and Asia and in the afternoon UK time for the UK and the Americas. So April 27th is diagnostics and assessment. May the 4th is going to be on therapeutics and rehabilitation. May the 11th is on mental health and stress management. May the 18th is on elderly care and assistive technologies. And on May the 25th, we're going to be talking about physical fitness, well-being, and personal health management. So these are the events: education and training, diagnostics and assessment, therapeutics and rehabilitation, mental health and stress management, elderly care and assistive technologies, and finally, personal health management. And I very much hope that you will join us for these events. So I'm now going to show you an example of an application which can help you to keep physically fit at home. It's just a promotional video, but it's something that I'm exploring now. I have a couple of exercise bikes. One is a typical sit down exercise bike trainer. It's actually a cross trainer, and the other one is a little portable device. There's a desktop device. It can go on a desktop or it can go on the floor, and you can use this to exercise in a highly motivated way by pedaling through the countryside or using a gamified environment to make the process of exercise as enjoyable as possible. So I'm just going to show you a little promotional video. It's a solution called VZ Fit, which is one of a number of different solutions that are available today. Yes, so that is VZ Fit, and I have got a video which I can show later, which shows exactly how it works with this little portable desktop exercise unit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce Associate Professor Lily Abdullah, whom I interviewed last week, and I'm going to show her video where she's talking about her work with the use of technology to be able to diagnose and assess mental health problems. So I'm going to those applications that you've just described. Perhaps you could share with us what life is like in Malaysia at the moment with the COVID-19 crisis. Do you have lockdown and social distancing?
Oh yes, of course. Until now, we are still have the MCO situation where I'm still working from home. So it has been like 7 months. We worked for a while. We went to the office for a while. That is around August, September last year, and then there is an increment in the cases of COVID-19. So back to MCO again. So most of us are still working from home until now. For this period, I think we have the MCO notice until 14th of April. So hopefully by then we can go back to the office. I haven't met anyone yet since 7 months ago, right? So yeah, working from home is enjoyable, plus of course depression also, because we couldn't meet anyone to talk to and so on. But yet it is a very good thing where we can work, communicate globally
Well,
easily.
that provides a really quite a good lead in to what you mentioned earlier on about mental health, and in particular how you can use technology to recognise signs of depression. Perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing with image processing and facial recognition, and also the analysis of speech and audio as ways of detecting depression.
Okay, since depression has been one of the what we call it chronic cases that happens in the world, I'm sure. In Malaysia too, we have like teenagers are suiciding themselves, just because of the stress they cannot handle and so on. So you can find a lot of apps, mobile apps that is free, downloadable, and of course some with some payable download apps. But most of them, as you can see, are using the CBT test. I'm not denying the CBT test for this stress detection. But I believe that with more features that we can combine with this CBT test, it will be more accurate to calculate or to detect what level is the stress level at that particular time. So myself and of course my students, we came up with by using facial and voice, right? So with image processing, detection, image processing, analysis, and so on. So we consider the face, we capture the face, and then when we look at the face, we analyze the face that we capture, and then if we found some points, there are points that we have a six emotion that we are detecting: happy, anger, and so on, right? So with these points that we capture, so we analyze it. Okay, this is a happy face. So happy plus the the CBT test that they have done. So we have one conclusion. With these two rules, so we can detect the level of the depression at a particular time. So after 2 weeks time, okay, we asking the patient to do the test again with similar action with the face, and then the CB test again, and then we can see the progress, whether it's like increasing or decreasing, right? So from there, we recommend the patient to go for clinical treatment, or just for food. We can take nutrition, okay, to reduce our stress level and so on. And of course, some meditation, exercises, yoga, and so on that we can advise them to do. So this will be like a regular check for the patient. So meanwhile, another student is like giving me a suggestion. Okay, doctor, why not we take voice as one of the features as well? So now we have the voice, the face, and the CBT test. By combining these three, we get a very good accuracy rate. Yeah, we have tested a few patients, real patients. Okay, and then we got a very good result. But of course, we need a lot more of samples and testing, so that we can get a more higher accurate and reliable system.
That's very interesting. So will you be using algorithms and artificial intelligence as a way of interpreting
Yes.
the data? And
Yeah.
another question is this intended so that a doctor or a physician can use the information to provide advice, or is it intended to help people to self-diagnose?
Yeah, because we get to know that most of the patient, they don't like to go to physician. They have that mind in they have set in their mind saying that if I go to the physician, people will know that I'm stressed, people will know that I'm going crazy, this is their mindset. So that is why this is a support, not to say we are like releasing or we are curing them, no, but this is a support system for self-diagnosing before before letting them to go for further treatment, or just to self. If we do not have any stress, but we would like to know what is the result of the system and so on, right? So we might not realize that we actually have a little bit of stress. So maybe with the recommendation that are given from the system, we can cure our stress and have a lower stress level, right? So this is our intention. Yeah.
Well, I think that's absolutely fascinating, and of course your work with image processing will come in very useful in recognizing these kind of symptoms. Well, that was Professor Lily Abdullah from University Putra, Malaysia. I've been joined in the studio now by our next guest, Leon Eisen. So I'm going to invite him into the conversation now, and going to discuss the work that he's been doing with Oxytone and their wearable devices. Leon, I introduced the session by talking about some of the challenges of today's lifestyle technologies and how important it is for us to be able to look after ourselves. But of course, preventative healthcare also includes looking after people who are ill, who already have pre-existing conditions like COPD and diabetes, etc. And when they fall ill, it's in our interest, both from a cost point of view and a personal point of view, to keep them out of hospital. So would you like just to tell us a little bit about Oxytone and the devices that you are involved with?
Yeah, hello, David. Good to participate in your channel. Thank you. Oxytone is the world's first solution that enables to monitor patient continuously at home on the hospital grade level. It means we can collect the patient information and apply this information, continuous information, for patient preventive care, for artificial intelligence care. And we're using specific report referred to specific diseases, like you said, COPD, CHF, respiratory diseases. And this is a very important breakthrough because, as you know, home monitoring is growing and telemedicine is booming now. And a lot of incentive or any government apply to raise home monitoring and reduce cost of care. But not everything is so good, because how our system, home monitoring and telehealth, is ready to accept all challenges that patients, specifically complex disease patients, pose for telehealth. And as you know, it's not a big breakthrough happened before. So our telehealth and digital health is dedicated mostly for patients with needs or initial stage of diseases. And it's important to prevent these kind of complications as well. But actually, the frequency of complications and the level of complications are quite low. And the most important that about 5% of all patients, they consume about 65% of healthcare spending. So there is a huge unbalance between the how many patients consume the most healthcare money. And this is what Oxytone is solving. So Oxytone deliver continuous monitoring solutions for patients at home, specifically dedicated for patients with complex diseases that is underserved, very much underserved today. And we plan to move telehealth from just monitoring and some initial preventive capabilities for meals diseases to full capabilities to prevent patient complications, patients with complex diseases. So patient receive and physicians, they receive the tools, specific tools that enables to collect patient continuous information, rearrange this information, analyze this information, and deliver to physician in appropriate time specific tools for decision. So physician in real time could understand what happened to patient, could accept some alarm about patient, and alarm also is very important because it doesn't have to be the false alarm. Alarm should be based on the pattern on many vital signs. So actually what we deliver the full solution that enables physician to decide in real time and immediately apply any intervention or titration of care plan if something happens with this patient.
Yeah, I think that's very relevant and very important. Could I just ask you just a little bit about what we call LongCOVID? What kind of contribution can wearable devices make in the management of long COVID?
Oh, this is a very important question. Thank you, David. You know that post-COVID complications is about 30% of people have post-COVID complications. And we still don't know how to deal with these because our telehealth is not ready. It's totally new type of complication. We have to build new type of care plans, new type of monitoring, and new type of decision-making resources. And this is where Oxytone is working hard on, because first of all, we develop very specific reports, and we offer clinics to monitor post-COVID patients, for example, for a week, like Holter type monitoring. So we collect almost all vital signs: blood oxygen saturation, pulse rate variability, skin temperature, respiration rate. Soon it will be blood pressure added. So we have the full picture of patients through the week, through continuous monitoring every second. Just imagine every second. So we can catch up with any event that is currently hidden from physicians because they use some kind of old technology, episodic technology, and fragmented care. So in our case, we come up with some report for physician, and physician has the full information about patient, how post-disease happens, to track post-disease development, and to track progress of patients or deterioration of patient. In this case, physician could decide what kind of care plan to apply to the patient to prevent the continuous deterioration of the patient health.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Leon. I know you're going to be with us again this afternoon, and also on this afternoon's program is a guy called Pete Stevenson, who his company is called eCare 21. He's developing an eCare healthcare ecosystem where I think you will have lots to talk about how these devices interface with quite complex healthcare ecosystems to deliver optimum results. So thank you for joining me this morning, Leon. I'm now going to invite Lucia Panese into the studio and have a conversation with her. So thanks once again, Leon. So hi, Lucia.
Hi, David.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. And how's the situation in England?
Well, we came out of the next stage of removing lockdown. So we had hairdressers. I've still not had my hair cut. I'm looking forward to that. So hairdressers, beauty salons, and we're able to go to the pub as well, as long as it's outside. So, but there's still quite tight restrictions in terms of what you can do indoors. So we have another 5 weeks to wait before our next iteration. And what about Italy? What's the situation there?
The situation is different in every region. And while the vaccination process is going on, there is the tendency of trying to open up a little bit. So, for example, in Lombardy, my region, I'm in Milano right now. Also here, the hairdressers open today again, but it's updated week by week according to the data that we get. So the infection data change the situation always of the following week. So the tendency is to try and be a little bit looser in the openings, but still with a very careful eye on the situation. I don't think we're still over the worst burden again.
No, and of course we only see on the news, television, reading the papers what's going on in Europe, and of course in the UK it's complicated by Brexit as well. So
yeah.
I think so. Our government is probably a little bit smug that our vaccination rates are higher than in Europe, and I know in Italy there are some problems with supply, so it's a very difficult situation. But moving on to preventative healthcare, you've been involved in gamification for quite a number of years. Lucia's company is one of the leading companies in Europe when it comes to development and research of gamification. Have you always been involved in gamification in healthcare? Was it something that right from the very beginning that you were involved with, or were you involved in gamification in other areas as well?
Well, 17 years ago, when I started the company, actually, we started with games and gamification in the training area. So it was training and education, basically. So both for companies and within universities. And then some 5 to 6 years later, so that makes over 10 years now in the meantime, we started to apply gamification more and more in the healthcare area, which is now the first market for us, as you know.
And you've been involved in quite a number of different projects over the years. I think what an impressive catalogue of different European projects you've been involved in. Perhaps we could just talk specifically about projects that are to do with preventative healthcare, and maybe look at projects that have been targeting the elderly. And the reason why I mention the elderly, not because I fall into that category, but mainly because as we know from newspaper reports and information we get about coronavirus, the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions are particularly vulnerable to coronavirus. They're more likely to get seriously ill and die from coronavirus than the general population. Tell us a little bit about the work that you've done with elderly care.
Yes, I think the most interesting experience was a 3-year project which was called Do Re Mi. And the target group there was exactly the elderly population, potentially with comorbidities. So it was elderly people who had some sort of cognitive decline, so mild to cognitive deterioration, and comorbidities such as, for example, malnutrition, or they were not socializing a lot, so they were sort of lagging around at home, staying on the sofa in front of the telly. So they didn't have enough stimulation and they didn't have a good quality of life. So this was the target group that we analyzed at that time. And it was a very interesting work because what we came up with was, of course, a gamified system, because that's what we do, which contained, in a way, let me call them 2 layers. One layer was groups of exercises targeting some motor exercises, very many cognitive stimuli such as attention or comprehension of written language, categorization capabilities, calculation capabilities, so things like that. And so the games had some very clear objectives in terms of stimulation. And at the same time, we overlapped a gamification layer, which contained a little puppy. It was a little dog who had to travel Europe. And the idea was that a little bit like the games we used to play when we were children and we didn't have any digital games. So you had sort of to throw the dice and then go on this cardboard and see what was happening there. So the dog would travel Europe and explore in different towns all the sightseeings and the nice monuments, the nice areas. So finding out what happens there in the city. And each time the dog reached such a beautiful spot in the town, the dog would send a sort of postcard to the elderly player. And he had a digital album to collect all these pictures and keep them there. So there was the dog in front of the Tour Eiffel or in front of London Bridge, whatever, sending his greetings to the player. So this was the gamification part. And in order to make the dog travel Europe, you had to play, you as a user of the system, to play the motor and the cognitive games. So each time you played some games, the dog would collect the scores to go on moving through Europe. And the other idea was, and that was the most difficult one, honestly, was to try and find out some strategies to make people meet also in person. So in other words, there was a sort of social area which was suggesting to the elderly, give a friend a call and meet him for coffee, or why don't you have a walk in the park and see if you can meet someone. So if the player was collecting one of these challenges and accepting it, they would also gain some scores for the dog to travel. And there was a sort of mini social network within the system, so that if you and me, we are both players in the system, I can challenge you and tell you, hey, David, my dog is already Milano, for example. Where is yours? So I'm further. I did travel more than you did, so that you want to keep up with me, and we try to sort of push each other to go on playing. So this was extremely interesting. Actually, it's always very difficult to then, in practical terms, to start a system which contains this social side, because you have a cold start in the system. So if you want to launch it on the market, there is a moment where you have 0 participants, and to really start making the ball roll in a way, having enough players so that the challenges are interesting, you should in a way find a lot of users to start a system simultaneously, so that you have already a community to base the system on.
Yeah,
So
I think that's
yes.
very, yeah, that's very interesting, because really the project was very advanced for its time. And just from what you've described, it has so many elements of gamification involved in it. But it is, of course, as you say, it's dependent on technology. And of course, in the current lockdown situation, people are not going to be encouraged to meet physically because of the coronavirus. But today we have social media technologies. We have technologies like we're using today, which allow people to meet virtually. So, do you think that this project could be revived, or do you think that there are opportunities to develop it to be more sophisticated now that the technologies are so much more powerful today?
Well, certainly, yes. I think it's also quite easy probably to refresh it and to find also new ways of letting people socialize. By the way, if for example, elderly people have a smartphone in their pockets, then you know, for example, even only how far they walked, you can count the steps and so on. So it can also be a walk in the park on their own, or you can, in a way, add some challenges to talk to people in video conference, or to do several things online, as you say. I think that the main point is always user motivation. So, as you know, we are quite, if you want, strict in that methodology. So everything that we develop goes through very tough studies of user motivation. So everything that is contained in the system, which are the games, and by the way, the games are auto-adaptive. So if players play well, they can go on in increasing difficulties, or if they're not that good, the difficulty decreases on its own. But also all the gamification strategy, the PET, the travel through Europe, comes out of motivational studies with these users. So we know why we picked it. We know that people, elderly people all over Europe, love to travel, or they love to remind themselves of the times when they could travel, when they were able to travel. They love pets because pets are a symbol of company, of love, of being cared for, of caring for other living beings. So with this in mind, we should really have a look at how to motivate them, or what motivates them to be active on social media. Not everybody's like you, David. Very many people over 60, of course, love to be there in presence and have a little bit of sadness when they think they can interact only through the technology, or they have a technology in the middle. So I think motivational studies in these with this focus are fundamental here to refresh the system. And then, of course, we would need a sponsor, as usual.
Yeah, of course, yes, as usual, yes. But it seems to me that you know, you have all the elements there for really quite a successful proposition, particularly today. And thank you for your compliments about my use of technology. But I've observed that older people now are becoming much more familiar with things like WhatsApp. They are taking part in community groups, and coronavirus, you know, as sad as and problematic as it is, has created this greater level of awareness and usage of technologies, which I think would be very relevant for a project exactly like this.
Yes, definitely, yes, David. But I guess what we were trying to do with this project was picking exactly those people which do not belong to these groups, you know, because if elderly people already belong to those who use WhatsApp every day, or I listen to stories which are fantastic, something like, we had a birthday in the family, my grandchildren, whatever, turned 10 or 5 or what you want, and we had a birthday via Zoom, and they participated, having cake and drinking their Prosecco, of course, because we're in Italy, together with the family, although they were not there. These are not the people with the comorbidities which are excluded from socializing or with a bad lifestyle. Of course, they can do with some sort of extra stimuli. But we were trying to pick those which are really, in a way, excluded from all this which is going on. So those people who represent a bigger risk in terms of healthcare.
Yeah, I take your point, and I know in my own situation, you know, we have people in our village who are elderly, but they don't have a smartphone and they don't have a computer and they're not connected. So it's very difficult for those people to get involved in technology. However, over recent weeks, you know, I've had personal experience with my partner's father living with us, who's 96 years old, and he's had some fantastic care from the social services. We have a protocol here in the UK. If it's triggered by an accident or a problem that requires paramedics to come out, then that person goes into a kind of care plan. And so they have visitors every day to come and dress them in the morning and get them ready for bed at night. But one of the big things that I've really noticed about the situation today, like that, compared to how it was with my mother when she was very ill about 10 years ago, is that these care providers do encourage the elderly patient to do as much as possible themselves. So I think looking at that and bringing this into the situation that we're discussing, you could see how the care services who have the contact with the individuals you're trying to reach, they could be a kind of conduit to get people involved in these kind of projects. Just to touch on one other point about the way this technical solution works. You mentioned the dog and traveling around Europe. You know, there are so many elements to that which are attractive, as you've described, to older people. But it's a little bit like the Tamagotchi. There are people looking at applications where the older person has to look after a pet. So what's your view on this, the gamification element of Tamagotchi? Whether you could use this as a way of encouraging elderly people to look after a virtual pet and help it to travel around the world?
Definitely the pet is an element which motivates elderly people and the travel as well. So as I said, this is, we have already studied, so this is promising. What I do not know is if they would like to take care of a virtual pet all the time. So with the same intensity, you should take care of a real pet. So again, there's some food for a sort of add-on of the motivational studies that we've been carrying on. There is some potential. I don't know, because of course, if they don't take care of it and the dog dies, then they might be quickly sad and then it's over. So you have to really take care of how this should be set up.
Yeah, I agree that you don't want to place people in that sort of situation. But I'm aware of other projects where people have not just had a virtual dog, they've had a robotic dog with artificial intelligence, and that's another angle that people have been used, that the elderly person looks after this physical pet that looks like a dog but is actually a robot which is connected to the internet. But you can maybe combine all of these things and give some a physical artifact which the elderly patient could talk to if it's got chatbot technology built into it, and also give it some sort of company, and then maybe tell the elderly patient about its travels around Europe with your project. How about that?
Well, yes, why not again? But the only chatbot technologies that I saw, and it's quite a few, usually end up continuing to say that they didn't understand your question. So I would again be a bit careful there. Although you might add some bow bow woof woof depending on the language in the middle, but still, if the chatbot then is not able to give you a smart sentence, very frustrating for people who don't need cognitive stimuli. Imagine if, it can be a sort of boomerang turning around.
Yeah, I realize that you could bring yourself some problems with any of these solutions, and I think that's one of the issues that may come out this afternoon, is that a lot of people involved in healthcare technology, particularly mobile apps and devices, they're very wary about the litigation aspects of these devices. They don't want to be providing advice that leads to somebody becoming ill or dying, and find themselves sued by providing advice. So they develop interesting ways of avoiding giving direct advice, which is still provided by human beings who've got empathy, of course. But the irony is that human beings tend to make more mistakes than machines. So, yeah, we have a difficult situation. Anyway, Lucia, I want to thank you again for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you, and I'm sure we'll be talking again on some of the future programs. We had one or two technical difficulties that I've noticed. I don't know whether the audience has noticed it as well, with some of the video not playing at full speed and video quality. So
my connection. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, well, not
Thanks
to worry.
For having me, David.
I'm very. It's a great pleasure. So thank you, Lucia. So have a good day, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you. Bye bye. Well, that was Lucia. Lucia Panese has been a good friend and colleague and collaborator over the years, and they have many examples of applications that they've developed. I probably it's appropriate just to give you an insight to one of their flagship products, which is involved in the area of using technology to help people in the rehabilitation progress. So I'm just going to play a little promotional video of that. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this program interesting. I'm going to close now with a little resume of the broadcasts that are upcoming and some of the guests that are involved in that. So I hope to see you again this afternoon, where we've got some additional guests, again, talking about preventative healthcare. So thank you once again.